First, I think it's pertinent to take a look at Councilmember Hickman's professional life as an oil and gas attorney. This is his website. These are two different versions of his website. This one right here is from December 4th, 2015. And this one is from just a few months earlier, August 2015. And here you see on the left, it's an oil derrick device here. And on the right, we have something that looks much more environmentally friendly. At first glance, you wouldn't get the idea that Mr. Hickman does oil and gas law by looking at the image on the right, but the image on the left from just a few months earlier is very clearly, this is oil and gas law. And there's some other things to look out since he is a oil and gas attorney. We can look at some of the clients that he's represented in the past. And why not let's start with this one. This was a case, a class action lawsuit that was appealed. It went all the way to the Supreme Court level. And the plaintiff in this was a Mr. Glenn D. Sackett, who I believe his claim was something like there was damage to his land resulting from oil and gas drilling. And we come down here, and Mr. Hickman, Councilmember Hickman, was representing the oil and gas companies. And you can see that right here. William Hickman, right here. Okay. So one of his clients appears to be Chesapeake Energy and some of these other subsidiary companies. Anyway, he was not sure if he was working for Chesapeake itself, but he was one of the many attorneys representing the many different oil and gas companies that were defendants or appellants in this defendants in this class action lawsuit that went all the way to the Supreme Court. So we'll X out of that. And what else? What else can we look at? Here is another case. This is a case where Mr. Hickman represented a company called FPC Disposal Incorporated. This is another class action lawsuit where a family, Jackie Eugene Ellison and Gene Ellison and Marcia Nelson. Gene Ellison and Marcia Ellison, a family couple, sued FPC Disposal Incorporated and a number of different oil and gas companies to recover damages to their land caused by a company, FPC Disposal Incorporated, that takes basically oil and gas drilling wastes, wastewater products, things like that, from oil companies and disposes of them. And so the Ellison family, claimed a number of different damages to the waters in and under. They say the water was potable and well suited for human and animal consumption and irrigation until the FPC disposal facility, began operating at some point, and it caused a lot of problems for the Ellison family, as is alleged in the case. And so they sued for damages, and they had one attorney named Michael J. Blaschke, based in Oklahoma City. He was their attorney. And Mr. Hickman was one of the many attorneys in this class action suit. Mr. Hickman was one of the many attorneys representing the oil and gas companies and trying to say that the oil and gas companies were not responsible for this pollution, contamination of the water, destruction of the land, etc., etc. Plaintiffs in this case asked for, nothing out of the ordinary. They wanted their land and their water cleaned up. Not a big ask, but we know who Mr. Hickman was defending. Here's another lawsuit another lawsuit that also went to the Supreme Court, and Mr. Hickman served as the attorney for Bob L. Loftus Oil and Gas Company against another oil and gas exploration company, and there's really not much to say about that, but that's Mr. Hickman's history representing oil and gas. Here's another lawsuit. This is the one from 2016. Mr. Hickman is the representative of a Texas-based corporation called Turbo Drilling Fluids. And Turbo Drilling Fluids supplies fracking fluids to oil and gas drillers, different substances used in the process of hydraulic fracturing. And here is Mr. Hickman's signature. So we have a lot of environmental policies that are very important in the city of Norman coming up here. We have the Mayor's Climate Protection Agreement. We have the transition to 100% renewable energy initiative coming up. We have negotiations with OG&E coming up. We would like to see the oil and gas drilling ordinance amended. And so these are things that I think need to be thought about when considering who to vote for in the upcoming elections. And we see that Mr. Hickman's livelihood is gained by representing oil and gas companies. What else do we have here? So Mr. Hickman likes to present himself as an environmentalist. He has talked about his membership with the Oklahoma Sierra Club chapter, and he's come to some local meetings and shaken hands with, the members of that environmental voting bloc. So I think it's important to look at actions versus private actions versus public actions, and how do we square these the way these contradictory actions may appear on the surface, and how do they what does this mean once someone actually gets elected. So another thing to look at is some of Mr. Hickman's political contributions, his campaign contributions, and here we see this is a donation Mr. Hickman made to Oklahoma Congressional District Representative Steven Russell. And he was recently defeated by Democrat Kendra Horn in the latest general election or midterm election. And Mr. Hickman gave $500 to Steven Russell. And if you don't know much about Steven Russell, he's a Second Amendment enthusiast. He actually owns his own firm that manufactures assault rifles and firearms and things like that. He's on record as making very bigoted, homophobic statements publicly, and misogynistic remarks as well. He's on record as a climate change denier, I believe. And so this is someone who our council member, Ward 4 council member William Hickman, also known as Bill Hickman, gave $500 to Steven Russell's campaign, and that was in June of 2016. So we can look at some of Mr. Hickman's other political campaign, some of the other campaign contributions he's made to others, and here we see Jim Inhofe. He gave $250 to Jim Inhofe in October of 2011. And of course, Inhofe is probably the most infamous climate change denier of all. He's famously called, I believe, Senator Snowball, because I guess one winter it was snowing in Washington, D.C., and he thought it would be a nice little stunt to bring a snowball into the Senate chambers and toss it around, and claim that this was evidence that that global warming is a hoax or whatever. And so Mr. Hickman gave $250 to Senator Jim Inhofe. And now the reason I bring this up is because the city of Norman is in the process of moving forward with the mayor's climate protection agreement and transitioning to 100% renewable energy. The Environmental Control Advisory Board is currently at work on an implementation plan for the mayor's climate protection agreement. There's a lot of conservation measures, lots of things to do to try and incentivize the conservation of energy resources, and also helping to push the transition to 100% renewable energy by, I believe, is it 20, sometime in the near future. And so these are things that we're pressing on to kind of wean the city and other communities off of the fossil fuel economy. And you see Mr. Hickman is very much on record supporting in his professional life and in his political campaign contributions. He's very much wedded to. I would say it's probably fair to assume he's pretty definitely wedded to the fossil fuel industry. That's his livelihood as a litigator, as in a lot of ways. A lot of his cases, it seems to be that just looking at his website and his client list, a lot of his livelihood is derived from representing clients in the oil and gas industry. So when you're thinking about, well, do we want renewable energy? Do we want to focus on renewable energy for the city? Do we want the mayor's climate protection and energy conservation measures implemented at the local level? Is Mr. Hickman the right person for the job? And considering, how wedded he is to the fossil fuel industry, you have to ask yourself those questions. Is he going to be a reliable advocate for these measures that have already been implemented and have been moving and have been in place for a long time, and now we're just getting some of these things off the ground? And I would be very concerned to see someone who's given lots of money to climate deniers serve as mayor in the city of Norman. Be very worried about that. And what else can we look at? Here is an advertisement from a newsletter. This is one of Mr. Hickman's earlier endeavors as a oil and gas attorney. He had a partner at that time called Jeremy Fitzpatrick. And this is an advertisement that appeared in a newsletter from the Oklahoma Association of Professional Landmen. And here you see in this newsletter is an advertisement from Mr. Hickman and his partner's firm. And it here says their areas of practice are oil and gas litigation, oil and gas title examination, condemnation, commercial transactions, surface damage disputes, which means they're defending oil and gas companies against landowners who had their property drilled on and are now claiming that there was environmental damage as the result of drilling operations. So these are the people Mr. Hickman represents, while publicly claiming to be concerned about environmental issues and being environmentally friendly. Privately, in his private law practice, he supports, he litigates on behalf of oil and gas companies. So there's that to take into account when you're trying to find the right person to represent environmental interests in the city of Norman. Here's a Journal Record article from 2007, and the headline is Oklahoma City Attorney Duo Targeting Age Gap in the Oil and Gas Industry. And this is about Mr. Hickman and Mr. Fitzpatrick and the title work they're doing. And it says here, there's a particularly good line about how they're capitalizing on the boom in the, I guess you can assume this is the fracking boom, since it's 2007. This is right about the time fracking technology was really taking off, and we were experiencing a big new boom in the oil and gas production. Here it says, motivated not just by an entrepreneurial spirit, but by the prospect of capitalizing on a booming industry. Mr. Hickman and Mr. Fitzpatrick and their law partnership. So those are some things to be thinking about when you're deciding whether or not you want to support a candidate who is strong on environmental policy or publicly and what they do in their private legal practice. That's important to consider, I think. And that's the reason for making this video and showing people the documentation of that. It shows politicians' actions how they play out publicly versus what they do in their private life and their professional career, and where they really put their passions, as it were. So I hope people will take this into consideration when deciding who to vote for mayor. And I'll be doing some more of these videos looking at the other candidates and how their values and their goals align with their public lives in front of the camera and the papers and whatever, and how that aligns with how they conduct themselves in their professional lives privately. And I hope this is helpful. I hope it gives people more information on how to decide who to vote for. And it's a very important election year for the city of Norman, and we have a lot of things to consider. How the city moves forward, whether it's environmental policy, development, economic development policy, how we subsidize or choose not to, hopefully, subsidize different businesses and corporations that want to come in here and use private money or use public money for private projects. So hopefully we can continue looking at the records of these candidates and all make more informed decisions together. And so I hope this video was helpful. And if you have any other questions that you'd like to ask, put them in the comments or contact me personally. And let's just hope we all are able to find a better way forward for Norman in the future, and keeping our environment healthy, keeping land undamaged, and our water clean and drinkable, and hopefully getting that stormwater utility passed after all of these years. It's very important to have that a priority as well. I wanted to mention that. So thank you for watching, and appreciate your time. Have a good day.